Well, this week, as the primer was curing on the body and the seats, I decided I would go ahead and bring the running gear back into the shop and pre-fit this body to the undercarriage just to make sure everything lines up before I get into the painting process. So to bring that in, I need to get this International mower out of the way, kind of do some jockeying and rearrange the shop so I can fit this undercarriage back in the shop that fits this buggy. So I did this undercarriage quite a while back. It's the first video in the playlist on this restoration project. And there's been something that's been kind of nagging at me, sticking out, something that just didn't seem quite right about this whole project. When I introduced this project, I introduced it as a Democrat-style buggy restoration. And that is so kind of. The body is a typical Democrat-style body, but the undercarriage is not a traditional, typical style Democrat undercarriage. It is more of a mountain wagon or spring wagon style undercarriage. Now, somehow, somewhere, I don't know just how this happened. This is part of history that has just disappeared. How these two different style buggies got married together somewhere, somehow. I just don't know. You know, I've watched a number of different collector shows, you know, and they're going through their collectible cars, and this is a 40s, and that's a 30s, and yada, yada, yada. But oftentimes what is on the outside body-wise is not true to form when you get to looking under the hood or in the chassis. Oftentimes these old vintage cars have modern transmissions, engines, hydraulic brakes, all these type of things. So, you know, it isn't always a true to form, traditional, authentic, old style car. Well, these old buggies can tend to be that way also. Things happen in life. Something gets wrecked, you know, there's a rollover, you know, who knows what happens, and a couple different parts of different buggies get put together. And I kind of have that suspicion of maybe that's something that has happened with this buggy. You know, we'll get into this, and when I start to fit the body onto the bolsters of the springs, it begins to show up that I don't think this body was ever really on this undercarriage, and you'll see why here in a minute. You know, when I'm fitting these front spring bolsters onto the framework of this body, this is not how a Democrat style bolster would attach. It would actually attach right in the center of the bolster where the bolsters are attached to the springs, whereas a typical spring wagon style undercarriage would bolt out on the ends. And so you see it's really close to interfering with the framework on this body, but I can make it work. Now, but when we get into the side springs, we see we have a problem here. The style of this Democrat buggy has an internal framework, and you've noticed it has these inside frame braces also, with a bolt going through the framework of each brace. Well, two of these bolts or braces interfere with the side spring bolsters. Now, if this had a typical end spring on the front and a 3/4 platform spring in the back, which would be a correct Democrat style buggy, this would not be a problem. But here I need to countersink these nuts up into the framework to allow these side spring bolsters to set flush up against the framework. Well, as you can see, we're going to make this fit. Now, another thing that we have changed on this undercarriage, from the old style axles, we've converted them to roller bearing, and they used to have steel tires, and we've converted them to rubber tires. Well, when they were steel tires, you would just have a solid iron rub bar for the wheels to rub up against in an extreme right-left turn. When you have rubber tires, you need a roller on the side to allow these wheels to spin. Otherwise, the wheels will grab that solid piece of iron and actually tip you right over. So I'm going to change these solid iron rub irons to a roller rub iron. So in hanging the brake assembly on this buggy, a few little things kind of show up, but I think it'll work on here. We're going to go ahead and mount this brake bar and get all these kind of pre-drilled. I'm not going to set the bolts quite yet. I'm going to take them back out when I do the painting. But again, I want this kind of a dry fit, all the handling now while it's in primer before I do all the finished paintwork. So anyway, we can see this is all going to fit. May not have been the way it was designed originally, but it's adaptable. We're going to make it work. So I got to do some brake blocks and a few other odds and ends, and we'll get into that next week. Once again, thanks for following along. Thanks for watching.